Hello there. Here we are again with another episode of VODCAST, proudly brought to you by No Deviation. My name is Joon, and I'm a director at No Deviation. I will be the moderator of this session of VODCAST, discussing establishing data governance within digital validation sector. Joining me on this episode is a team of highly esteemed thought leaders in their fields. Welcome, gentlemen. Let's take a quick 30 seconds each to introduce yourself, your name and your field, and whichever that you want to share. Start with George.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is George Brunner. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Acumen Analytics. Acumen is a company that works with life sciences to improve their quality and improve their processes through data analytics and automation.
Thank you, George. Off to you, Jer.
Hi, my name is Gerard Carton. I'm Managing Director of Plankbus Limited. We deliver software solutions to the construction, validation and operation sectors of the pharmaceutical industry. My background is in construction and CQV, mostly in the pharma and oil and gas sector. And I'm excited to be here with Dave and George and yourself here today, June.
Thank you very much, Jer. Nice to have you with us. Last but not least, Dave.
Okay. Hello, my name is Dave O'Connor. I work for No Deviation. I work as a digital transformation lead for No Deviation, currently based at a client contract in Ireland. I'm very passionate about digital transformation. I'm also a member of the ISP community of practice on paperless validation.
Thanks, Dave. I'm really excited to engage the team here on our topic on establishing data governance within the digital validation sector. Now, before we go into the real discussion on that topic, let us start by talking about the current state of digitalization in validation space, right? So I would like to ask the first question to the panel. What is the current state of digital validation that you have experienced with the clients that you are dealing with, especially on interests on the rates of adoption, usage, maturity, expansion? So let me first direct this question to Dave. So Dave, could you share a little bit with us on the current state of digitalization in validation?
Well, I've seen that many of my clients are attracted to digital validation, mainly because of compliance, number one, and number two, speed to market. These are probably the main driving factors around digital tools that they're using currently. But I think part of this discussion will move from there. And a lot of the clients we work with are only focused on the compliance, and they're focused very much on speed to market, but they're not really understanding the full changes from going from paper to digital and the extra functionality that's also involved here. When you're moving from a paper-based system to a digital system, a lot of clients don't fully understand the power of what we have at our fingertips when we move to digital.
Yeah, that's interesting findings that you're sharing, right? So, George, I just want to ask
I can definitely add a little bit to that. That I agree completely with Dave that people are embracing digital validation because of the efficiencies that are brought, but they're not fully at this point in time taking advantage of integration and data mining and analytics to even take it further. So, but it's definitely getting there, especially with the new technologies that are coming out with robotic process automation and generative AI.
That's good. Like overall, I'm hearing from George and Dave that there is a strong push in the market to go towards digitization in validation, and there's a lot of untapped potential that we can gain, right? So let us move on to the next question that I would like to ask the team. It is the big question, at least from me, right? Because part of our title is about establishing data governance within the digital validation sector. So specifically, what is data governance, right? Particularly in reference to regulated industry, right? But I do not want to just specifically say around pharmaceutical industry, but rather regulated industry. So, Jer, the question would, I'll have you kicking off the discussion.
I suppose that like the textbook definition of data governance is the practices and processes that ensure high quality management and use of data within an organization. And there's a few ways you could look at it, and I'm sure Dave and George would get into the nuts and bolts of it. But from my perspective as a software vendor, there's a few big wins that I can see, and they can all come under the umbrella of what I call standardization. And there's a few benefits of that. And the first big benefit for me and for everybody is integrity, is data integrity, and that's consistent, reliable data throughout the life cycle of a facility or a plant. And this speaks to what George and Dave were saying in regards to untapped potential. You know, no matter what part of a process you're digitizing, you have and standardizing. Once that information is turned into data, that can be fed forward and back throughout the plant then for everybody to use throughout the life cycle. And this speaks to the next point, which really is collaboration. And it's this kind of seamless communication and collaboration amongst people. Myself, Dave, and George, we often work together, and there's times when we would love to collaborate with each other from a data perspective, but often the cost and resources required to enable data collaboration is bigger than the benefit of data collaboration. And it's not because there isn't a big win to be had, but we're collaborating on a project or facility level, but data decisions are made at a global level. So we could be looking to save tens, hundreds, or millions worth of project resources by collaborating from a data perspective, but you're dealing actually with global problems within an organization. So what happens when we can't do that is you've huge cost and time efficiency problems. We have resources spent on data conversion. We have, and with data conversion, you've all the issues around data cleanliness. You have edge cases, and it really becomes a very expensive process. And the final point really is operational efficiency. And for me, that's repetition of work. If somebody has recorded and validated something at the construction phase of the plant, do we really have to repeat that work to get the information into the C&Q system, into the maintenance system, into the EMS system, into the building management system, and whatever other system that you're using within a plant? Once something is done once, that should be it, once it's validated. And having a standardized framework that allows that to happen, for me, is what data governance is all about. I know, Dave, you're involved with the community of practice on data governance with the ISP, so I'm sure you're much more in the weeds on this.
Agreed. And the term like silos is used a lot, and I think it's a great term to use kind of to understand how, in projects we deal with vendors, and they would have their own silo, and the vendors would be trying their best to manage their data and to make sure the data it has good integrity and it's good value adding data. But then that silo from the vendor is transferred to the engineering house. The engineering house takes that data and manipulates it to some degree and transfers it into its own database. Then the client, the pharmaceutical client, would take that data again and use it in maybe multiple databases, like their calibration database, their maintenance database. So there's handshaking all the way through this, from multiple vendors to an engineering house, and then from the engineering house to the client. And every project you go on, there's slight differences from project to project, from client to client, to vendor. And this is probably where we would like to try and push towards, to clean that data and to make that data a bit more readily available, make it easier to transfer from one system to another, and overall to make it far more efficient. And as you mentioned, Gerard, to record it one time and make sure that there is good controls around that data capture. And similar to the terms we use in C&Q is commissioning, qualification, and validation. Having these extra layers of checking of data as well to make sure that the data is integral, that it is good value data, and there is good governance over that data as it goes through our checking process.
Yeah, and to add on with what Dave said, I totally agree. And there's two ways that data is flowing between these systems. One is point to point, and Dave had mentioned integration with quality management systems, integration with document management systems. So that has to be, those integrations need to be put in place to increase efficiency. And those integrations also need to be validated so that we know that we get the data integrity. And the other way that a lot of folks are dealing or addressing or leveraging the data is by placing it in a data lake or a data warehouse. And again, the same thing applies. The data needs to flow. It needs to be governed. In other words, yes, the data is flowing from point A to point B, but if it's going into a central repository, we need to know who has access to it, how it's going to be combined, and how it's going to be used.
Well, that is definitely very interesting. Like coming from a field execution person that has lived through the whole CQV, right? Just what you guys are saying is echoing really well with me because, as Dave said, we always practices our execution style in a silo, and where data is repeatedly given to another party, and along the way there's transcription error, there's misunderstanding, there's rework, and there's a lot of time wasted. I really do like the point that you have gotten into, George, about integration, right? How we can then push data from one process to another process seamlessly with the integration validated and the data point. As Jer has pointed out, the data should only be entered one time, and that one time only is a single source of truth going through the life cycle of the process. I think that is a great way to look at it going forward, right? So there's I have a little question over here because every time we talk about a process, I would want to know about the components of it, right? So this is a question I will pass on to Dave, right? Dave, could you just share with us what are the key components of a data governance that people should need to know about?
I think we touched on one or two of them already. George mentioned one about, the data lake and, who has access to the data, who can manipulate the data. It's like having access control, probably levels of control around the data. So it's essentially stewardship of that data, and having, an organization should have a governance document around that, or some sort of guidance around access control. So you should have a policy and standard. Normally, we're probably reliant on our IT colleagues to develop something like this for us. So access control is probably a key point, and also who can change the data. The having that level of access and having different competencies around controlling that data, and also it's your level of auditing of the data as well, so that you would have some sort of oversight and governance structure that people will go in and check data at various points along the life cycle of that data, especially at the input level where vendors are providing a lot of data, and making sure that it's clean and making sure that the vendors who are supplying the data are well vetted and that you can rely on that data. So as you mentioned, the single source of truth, that has to be, has to be compliant, and you have to really focus on that to make sure you have correct data coming in from the very beginning.
Okay, thanks, Dave. I will now move to another quite interesting topic, right? So now we always know that regulated industry is really slow to move, and that is generally true. But we also know that there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from other industry around it, especially on data governance. So what can we learn about data governance from other industry, right? That we could take as a lesson learned and bring it to the community of practice. How can we get on to establishing data governance in a digital validation, right? So Jer, I would direct this question to you for you to share your thoughts on what can we learn from other industry to pull in the best practices into establishing data governance in digital validation services.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that myself and George and Dave wrote about in a blog recently. And I think in the pharma industry we think that we're special and that we're the only regulated industry in the world. But there's a lot of other very highly regulated industries in the world. Everything from banking to telecoms to nuclear. They're all very regulated. Something that's really affected my life in the last few years is new regulation in the banking industry in Europe. We brought in open banking, And effectively, what I spoke about earlier with regards to standardization, this regulation has been put on the financial service industry in Europe to standardize their data across the whole sector. And what that has done, it's taken the power away from incumbent financial service providers. You're talking about 5 or 6 really large banks. And it's opened up the market in a very regulated way, very high standards of data governance to other players who can come into the market now and who can innovate. And this goes back to what Dave was saying about silos. You know, once upon a time there was these silos, and once you get into a data silo, it's very hard to get out of it. Which is a great thing for incumbents who actually own the silos. But for anyone looking to get in, or for any customers of these silos who are looking for anything new, you generally don't get it. So what's happened in Europe with banking is that you have a lot of new up-and-coming companies who are stealing huge market from incumbent players by delivering more innovative products, personalized products, in a lot of cases more secure and at a lot lower prices as well. There is still regulation put on all these new players, but the open banking standards means that integration, data scraping, data mining, everything George was talking about earlier is a lot easier to do. That's kind of that, and I think that's where we need to go with data governance within our sector.
George, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think I do, and that is I think the key point was the last one that Jerry made, was it makes the integration and the increased efficiency and the increased automation that much easier by having data standards. It levels the playing field.
Good.
And it will essentially speed up speed to market as well. You know, that's what all our clients really want, is they want more quicker speed to market. And, you know, if our clients can, you know, load data quicker, get their PMs up quicker, get their calibrations done quicker. You know, it's always a struggle in between your C&Q phase and your startup phase. You know, if that information is fed faster, then you can produce your medicines quicker, you know?
Yeah, like just on that, as an example from banking, I live in the UK at the moment. Here in the UK, you can switch banking provider in 1 hour now. So imagine trying to do that 5 years ago. So you can go into a new bank and you can move all of your financial history to another bank in 1 hour. So that's a goal. That's a goal.
Wow, that is surely mind blowing, because sometimes we could be queuing in the bank for a good couple hours, right? And from my experience, for this speed is just changing from my telco, and that was fast enough for me. But knowing about data governance and having a more unified way of doing stuff, it really does help us in this little thing that you're saying, especially on banking, but more so on how establishing data governance could actually get speed to market faster, and eventually, like in our industry, trying to benefit the patients, right? Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next topic over here. It is really a continuation from what I asked Dave a bit earlier about components of data governance, right? Within the term governance itself, we know something needs to govern the data governance. So the question I'm asking the team over here is, what guidance is currently available in the data governance and digital validation space to help industry players on the topic that we're talking about, establishing data governance? So could I get Dave to start off this discussion, and then George, you can add on to it?
Sure.
Well, at the moment, I'm tasked to write a chapter on the ISP community of practice for paperless validation on this topic. And at the moment, I'm really struggling to understand what I will actually put in this section, because at the moment there is very little governance in the sector from an industry point of view. You know, individual companies have their own governance within their own silos, and vendors have this, but as a whole across the industry, we don't have a central governance or guidance around this at the moment. So currently it's quite aspirational, and it's quite very much at the seed stage at the moment.
George,
Yeah,
anything to add to that?
Sure. I'm also working on that same guidance document in a different section than Dave, the actual implementation section. And they kind of dovetail because the policies and the standards that are being established in the section that Dave is working on flows into the implementation, right? And even if you're not moving the data out of the digital validation tool into a data warehouse, you still need the same governance within the application.
Now, Dave, like as you're saying, this guidance is a work in progress. We're trying to get somewhere. But what would be the desired outcome that the community of practice want to get to finally?
Oh, absolutely. We would like to try and standardize this as much as we can, but I would see there's probably a lot of headwind from industry as well around this. Everybody has, as we mentioned, incumbents have their own ideas of how they govern data. So I would think that the good practice guide could be difficult to write, but it will be quite aspirational initially. I think at the first stage it will be aspirational. It won't be something firm or directional at this stage, but longer term, hopefully we will get to there.
Okay. So we are looking forward then to the publication of the guide. I mean, like even though it's gonna be conceptual in nature, hopefully we would get more prescription in that document to help other players to get somewhere with data governance, right? I think so far the discussion has been very interesting. It's definitely gotten me thinking a little bit about data governance in general, right? So I'm gonna come to probably the last question that for the team here, a couple of questions, and then we can see how we bounce off ideas. But the first one would be like for data governance. I'm gonna direct this question to Jer. What do you see the big change that will be coming to the field of data governance in the next, 3 to 5 years?
I suppose what Dave and George are working on, community practice, it will be somewhat shaped by what they deliver, and it will, like I said, it will be aspirational. But I can see some standardization coming together at the moment. You can see various different groups coming together. One that I'm keenly interested in is the unified namespace protocol, which is out at the moment, very much a hot topic in the MES space. But I'm seeing it now bleeding into other systems, other sections of the industry as well. And that is that kind of single source of truth, easy management, enhanced access, scalability, and compatibility. It kind of brings all these points together. But for that to work, you need to reach a critical mass of adopters, and when you have a bunch of silos, like very large silos, I don't need to mention the names of these companies, but we know the companies that dominate the various spaces, when they're reticent to do it. But what we're seeing is you're seeing a lot of small and mid-sized companies coming together under the umbrella of a standardization protocol such as the UNS and becoming interoperable with each other and providing an alternative to these silos. So I see that gathering ahead of steam over the coming years. And eventually you'll see 1, 2, 3, and more of the larger companies, coming to the realization that collaboration or co-opetition is much better than the current way it is. And that's also going to be driven by the pharmaceutical companies themselves, who are really dying for or desperate for innovation.
But will they actually do it, or will they kind of rely on people like consultants like ourselves, like Acumen and PlanQuest, no deviation, to be the catalysts in that, in between the large incumbents and the clients? Is it falling on us to deliver this?
No, well, it's falling on that. You're going to see. I think you're going to see consultants. You're going to see product companies, and you're going to see end users being the ones driving it, all coming together and coming up against and putting it to the incumbent providers to say, okay, well, we have this really good niche product that we want to talk to your product. We don't want to do a direct integration. We want to use a standardized protocol. Because the problem with doing a direct integration with a system is there's so many different versions of a system. You could have a maintenance system that has maybe 7 different versions, within one organization or within a group of organizations, and it's not just a standard integration. You have to do an integration with every different version of it. And people just don't have an appetite for that anymore, So you're going to see it coming more and more where you have consultants, SME product providers, and pharma companies coming together to push this kind of standardization, backed up by the type of community of practice documents that you guys are producing.
And I can add a little bit. There is also process harmonization is going to drive it, and collaboration.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that with the likes of Tulip and Apprentice at the moment in the MES space as well.
And when I say harmonization within organizations of process, even if they have more than one vendor for a particular application, such as digital validation, they still should have harmonized processes. And that can be enabled with standardized data.
Great discussion over there. I'm hearing a lot of sweet sounding vision that's gonna happen, right? So my final question here to the team, I'm gonna direct this last question to George. What would be the blue sky solution that you can see for data governance? And that would be something to try to
I think enterprise solutions that can reach across silos. I think that's it. I don't know if it's by centralizing the data in a data warehouse or having some capability for data governance to and there are tools for this that drive access and usage across applications. That would be really, I think, an amazing thing.
Yes, that is a very elegant phrase that you put there. Enterprise solution that could tie all silos. That is, I think that would be the blue sky solution that we all would like to get to. Single source of truth, all data in one place, all data accessible by whatever processes that happens, right? Is there anybody who wants to add anything to the blue sky solution?
No, I think George pretty much hit the nail on the head there. It is just about breaking down silos. And I know it's something that's said all the time, but we're still saying it because it still hasn't happened, So hopefully the next 3 to 5 years, we'll keep working towards that.
Yeah, and hopefully it will become easier for C&Q engineers as well when they move from project to project, that they'll see similar, data capture techniques and, similar ways of capturing data to feed that data forward as well. Like, will maybe be a lot more simple and a lot clearer for people as well when they're recording data. They know exactly where it's going and they know how it's reproduced quite easily, and also for the clients as well, that they can easily capture data as well.
Yes, we all look forward to that one day, Dave, where all this data capturing and mining the data using data analytics will be something at our fingertips. Right. On that note, I am wrapping up the panel discussion. Thank you very much, George, and Dave, for your time discussing about establishing data governance in the digital validation sector. I do hear a lot of thoughts, a lot of work, a lot of good work that you are doing, and the vision that we try to achieve too. I'm sure in time to come, within the next 3 to 5 years, probably, hopefully, is even less, that we actually can achieve data governance within our regulated industry. Now, to our audience, thank you very much for tuning in to another session powered by No Deviation. If you have any more queries, you can direct it to us at hello@nodeviation.com. Alternatively, you can also reach out to the thought leaders, Gerard Carton, George Brunner, and Dave O'Connor, and find them on LinkedIn. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good one.